Ladies and gentlemen, within the quiet hours when the body rests and the outer world grows dim, the inner kingdom awakens. It is here, in the gentle suspension between waking and sleep, that the mind becomes a fertile field, ready to receive new impressions. A nap taken in faith is never idle time. It is a sacred interval in which unseen forces rearrange circumstances, dissolve obstacles, and prepare the way for abundance. When one yields to rest with a clear intention, sleep itself becomes an ally, working silently and faithfully on one's behalf. The mind, when freed from strain, returns to its natural state of harmony. In this harmony lies the law of attraction in its purest form. Wealth is not chased or forced, it is drawn by alignment. As the body sleeps lightly, the subconscious listens deeply. It accepts without argument the ideas impressed upon it, and it moves to express them in visible form. Thus, a short nap, entered with expectancy and trust, can be more powerful than hours of anxious effort. There is a divine economy that never fails. It responds not to struggle, but to recognition. When you rest in the assumption that supply is already established, you cooperate with this higher order. Sleep becomes a declaration of faith, a statement that you know the universe works while you rest. You are not leaving things undone. You are allowing them to be done through you. Many believe that wealth demands constant vigilance and exhaustion. This belief itself is the barrier. True prosperity flows through ease, order, and right timing. As you settle into a meditative nap, you withdraw attention from lack and place it upon fulfillment. The mind ceases to rehearse old limitations and opens to new patterns of success. Ideas, opportunities, and solutions form quietly, like seeds beneath the soil, unseen yet inevitable. 4 hours of conscious sleep, entered with calm expectancy, can restore not only the body, but the sense of dominion. You awaken refreshed, not merely in strength but in certainty. Circumstances begin to shift, often in surprising ways, because your inner assumption has changed. You no longer question whether wealth is possible. You rest in the knowing that it is your natural state. Money, like all good, responds to recognition. It seeks the one who is receptive, relaxed, and unafraid. When you nap in peace, you silently affirm that you live in a friendly universe, governed by intelligence and generosity. This affirmation, impressed during sleep, becomes a command. The subconscious accepts it as law and sets about its execution. Thus, rest is not withdrawal from life, but participation in its deeper rhythm. In the stillness of a nap, you align with infinite supply, and the invisible hand moves swiftly and accurately. What is accepted in sleep must appear in waking life, for the inner always precedes the outer, and the quiet mind is the open door through which abundance enters. Rest is not an escape from purpose, it is one of its most intelligent expressions. When the mind releases effort and the body becomes still, a deeper activity begins, one that cannot be forced by willpower or sustained by tension. True rest is alignment. It is the moment when personal striving steps aside and allows a greater order to operate. In this sense, rest is never passive. It is a conscious participation in a law that works most efficiently when interference ceases. The human tendency is to believe that results are born from pressure, urgency, and constant motion. Yet all creation follows a rhythm of action and repose. Fields are not commanded to produce through anxiety, they yield because they obey seasons. In the same way, the mind produces abundance when it is synchronized with ease. Rest restores this rhythm. It signals trust, and trust is the language through which higher intelligence responds. When one rests with awareness, the nervous system softens and the inner dialogue quiets. This silence is not emptiness, it is readiness. The mind, no longer defending old fears or rehearsing limitations, becomes receptive to new patterns. In this receptive state, ideas of abundance do not need to fight for entry. They arrive naturally, as rightful guests. The subconscious, relieved of strain, accepts these ideas without resistance and begins rearranging circumstances to match them. Spiritual practice is often imagined as effortful discipline, yet the most potent alignment occurs when effort dissolves. Rest declares that there is nothing to fear in stillness. It affirms that life continues to move intelligently even when personal control is relaxed. This declaration alone shifts inner conditions. It dissolves the belief that survival depends on exhaustion and replaces it with the understanding that support is constant. In rest, the mind stops arguing with good. Many desires fail to materialize not because they are unreasonable, but because they are pursued with tension. Tension communicates doubt. Rest communicates certainty. When the body relaxes and the breath deepens, the mind receives a subtle message: all is well. This message, repeated through intentional rest, becomes a conviction. Conviction impresses the subconscious, and the subconscious acts with precision. Rest also restores clarity. A fatigued mind confuses urgency with importance and effort with effectiveness. In rest, priorities realign. What is unnecessary falls away. What is essential rises effortlessly. Decisions made after rest often appear simple, even obvious, because they are no longer distorted by fear. This clarity is a form of wealth in itself, for it prevents wasted energy and misdirected action. There is also a moral quality to rest. It reflects self-respect and recognition of worth. To rest without guilt is to affirm that one's value is not measured by constant labor. This affirmation corrects a deep-seated belief in lack, the belief that one must earn existence through struggle. When this belief loosens, abundance finds less resistance. Supply moves toward those who know how to receive. In moments of rest, imagination becomes creative rather than compulsive. Instead of replaying problems, the mind begins to picture solutions. These images, formed in a relaxed state, carry authority. The subconscious treats them as instructions. What is calmly imagined during rest often manifests with less effort than what is aggressively pursued during stress. Rest also harmonizes emotion. Anxiety contracts the mind, peace expands it. Expansion allows perception of opportunities that were previously invisible. Many doors remain unseen not because they are closed, but because tension narrows vision. Rest widens it. From this widened perception come inspired actions, taken without strain and followed by natural results. The act of resting in faith is a spiritual declaration that life is orderly, benevolent, and responsive. This declaration is not spoken aloud, yet it is heard. The inner world responds first. Confidence replaces vigilance. Expectancy replaces doubt. From these inner conditions, outer changes follow with surprising speed. Even brief intervals of rest, when entered consciously, can reset the entire mental atmosphere. They interrupt patterns of worry before they harden into belief. They remind the mind of its natural state, which is calm authority rather than frantic control. Over time, this practice retrains consciousness to expect ease as the normal path. Way to success. Rest teaches receptivity, and receptivity is essential to abundance. One cannot receive while clenched. The open hand is relaxed. In rest, the inner hand opens. Life responds accordingly, placing into it ideas, connections, timing, and resources that could not be grasped through force. Thus, rest becomes a form of alignment, not because it does something visible, but because it removes what obstructs. It clears the channel rather than pushing the current. In this cleared state, spiritual law operates unobstructed, carrying supply, guidance, and right outcomes toward the one who understands that stillness is not absence of power, but its most refined expression, active beneath the surface, arranging, adjusting, fulfilling, responding, while the outer mind is quiet enough to allow the deeper intelligence to move without contradiction or delay, continuing its work beyond conscious awareness, sustaining order, restoring balance, and maintaining the uninterrupted flow of good as naturally as breath continues during sleep. The subconscious mind is not governed by logic, persuasion, or effort. It is governed by impression. What reaches it with feeling and repetition becomes law. During the waking hours, the conscious mind stands guard, questioning, doubting, comparing, and often rejecting what it deems unrealistic. It argues for limitation based on past experience and visible facts. But in light sleep, this guard relaxes. The critical faculty loosens its hold, and the door to the deeper mind opens quietly without resistance. Light sleep occupies a sacred threshold, neither fully awake nor fully unconscious. In this state, the mind is suggestible, impressionable, and extraordinarily receptive. It does not debate ideas of prosperity, it accepts them as instructions. This is why impressions received during this period carry such authority. They bypass the bits of disbelief and go directly to the source that governs behavior, expectation, and outcome. The subconscious does not distinguish between what is imagined and what is experienced. It responds to both as real. When an idea of wealth is introduced during light sleep, it is not treated as a wish, but as a fact. The subconscious immediately begins aligning inner attitudes and outer circumstances to support that fact. This alignment happens without strain, because the subconscious is not burdened by the emotional weight of trying to make something happen. It simply obeys. Many people attempt to change their financial condition through conscious affirmations alone, yet they struggle because those affirmations collide with deeply rooted beliefs formed long ago. These beliefs reside in the subconscious. Light sleep provides access to this deeper layer. It is here that old agreements with lack can be gently replaced without confrontation. The mind does not need to fight the old belief. It simply accepts a new one more easily when the surface resistance is absent. In light sleep, emotion softens. Fear loses its sharp edges. The body relaxes, and with this relaxation comes trust. Trust is the atmosphere in which new assumptions take root. A tense mind may repeat words of prosperity, but a relaxed mind absorbs them. This absorption is what gives the idea power. Once absorbed, it begins to express itself naturally, influencing choices, perceptions, and reactions throughout the day. The subconscious works continuously, regardless of whether one is aware of it. During sleep, it is especially active, sorting impressions, organizing memory, and shaping future behavior. When prosperity ideas are introduced at this time, they are woven into this ongoing activity. They become part of the internal blueprint from which action arises. One may awaken without remembering the suggestio. Yet feel subtly changed, more confident, more expectant, more at ease with receiving. Light sleep also neutralizes emotional resistance. Many people carry unconscious guilt around wealth, associating it with responsibility, exposure, or loss. These associations often block abundance despite conscious desire. In the receptive state of light sleep, new associations can be formed. Wealth can be impressed as safe, natural, and harmonious. The subconscious accepts this new framing and releases the old tension that once accompanied financial thought. Another quality of light sleep is unity. The sense of separation between self and desire diminishes. One does not feel distant from abundance, one feels aligned with it. This feeling is crucial because the subconscious responds more to feeling than to words. When prosperity is felt as present and normal during light sleep, the subconscious treats it as established reality and adjusts behavior accordingly. Ideas impressed during light sleep influence more than finances, they influence identity. The subconscious shapes self-concept, and self-concept determines what one allows. When wealth ideas enter during this receptive state, they gently reshape identity. One begins to see oneself as supported, capable, and deserving. This shift does not announce itself loudly. It reveals itself through calmer decisions, improved timing, and a reduced sense of urgency. Light sleep is also free from contradiction. During waking hours, the mind may affirm abundance while simultaneously worrying about bills or outcomes. These mixed signals confuse the subconscious. In light sleep, contradiction dissolves. There is only the impression given. The subconscious receives a single clear message and acts upon it without dilution. Because the subconscious governs habit, it also governs financial patterns, spending, saving, risk, and opportunity. Recognition all flow from subconscious programming. When prosperity ideas are planted during light sleep, these habits begin to adjust organically. There is less self-sabotage, less impulsive fear-based behavior, and more intuitive alignment with beneficial choices. The effectiveness of light sleep lies not in effort, but in timing. It meets the mind at a moment of openness. Just as soil receives seed most easily when softened by rain, the subconscious receives ideas most easily when softened by rest. There is no need for force, repetition to exhaustion, or emotional intensity. A single clear impression given at the right moment can outweigh years of conscious struggle. Over time, repeated impressions during light sleep create a new inner climate. Expectation shifts. One begins to assume that needs will be met, that opportunities will appear, that supply is responsive. These assumptions operate quietly, beneath awareness, shaping experience without drama. Life begins to reflect this new inner order through coincidence, chance meetings, inspired thoughts, and effortless provision. Thus, light sleep becomes a bridge between desire and fulfillment, not because it performs magic, but because it restores access to the mind that creates conditions. What is accepted there must express, because the subconscious does not question its instructions, it carries them forward faithfully, arranging perception and action in harmony with the idea received, continuing its work long after waking, shaping responses, expectations, and outcomes, in accordance with the quiet impressions planted when the mind was open, unguarded, receptive, and free from the old arguments that once delayed the natural flow of prosperity into visible experience. Wealth responds not to force but to agreement. It moves toward the state of mind that expects it calmly and without urgency. Ease is not laziness, it is confidence made visible. When the inner attitude relaxes, money finds a clear pathway. Struggle tightens perception and signals resistance, while ease signals readiness. What is sought with desperation often retreats, but what is welcomed with quiet certainty draws near of its own accord. Faith is not blind hoping, it is inner knowing. It does not strain to prove itself, it rests. When faith is present, there is no frantic measuring of progress, no constant checking to see whether results have arrived. This absence of tension is what allows results to form. Wealth is sensitive to emotional atmosphere. It flourishes where trust replaces fear and expectation replaces doubt. A relaxed expectation is a powerful magnet. It assumes fulfillment as natural and inevitable. This assumption removes the emotional charge that blocks flow. When one expects good without clinging to form or timing, the mind remains open. Open minds notice opportunities that anxious minds overlook. They respond instead of react. They act without panic and wait without despair. Ease also dissolves the inner conflict many people carry about money. Wanting wealth while fearing it creates contradiction. Ease resolves this contradiction by normalizing abundance. It frames wealth as a natural extension of order, rather than an extraordinary event requiring struggle. When wealth feels normal internally, it expresses externally with less friction. Faith removes the need to control every step. Control is often a disguise for fear. It assumes that without constant supervision, things will fall apart. Faith assumes the opposite, that there is intelligence at work beyond personal effort. This assumption relaxes the body and clears the mind. In this state, decisions are made with clarity rather than compulsion, and actions carry a different quality, lighter, more precise. Relaxed expectation also alters time. Impatience compresses time and creates the illusion of delay. Ease expands time and allows events to unfold in proper sequence. Many outcomes fail not because they are impossible, but because they are rushed. Faith allows timing to cooperate rather than resist. It understands that what is right cannot be late. Wealth flows through alignment, not insistence. When one insists, the mind narrows. When one aligns, the mind widens. Alignment occurs when inner belief matches outer desire without tension. This matching cannot happen under strain. It happens when desire is held lightly but confidently, without emotional pressure. Ease changes the questions one asks internally. Instead of asking when or how with anxiety, the mind begins to ask what feels natural next. This subtle shift produces different answers. The subconscious responds to calm inquiry with intuitive guidance. These responses often appear as simple impulses rather than dramatic signs. Because they arise from ease, they are easy to follow. Faith also softens attachment to outcome. Attachment creates fear of loss before gain has occurred. Ease removes this fear by trusting continuity. It trusts that supply is not a single event but a flow. This trust allows generosity, and generosity further confirms abundance internally. The mind begins to see money as circulating rather than scarce. Expectation without tension is a form of certainty. It does not announce itself loudly, yet it carries authority. The subconscious recognizes this authority. and organizes behavior accordingly. One may find oneself taking actions that previously felt risky, but now feel obvious. These actions are not reckless, they are aligned. They arise from an inner state that assumes support. Ease also affects how one interprets setbacks. Instead of seeing them as signs of failure, they are seen as adjustments. This interpretation prevents emotional collapse. Faith remains intact, and the flow is not interrupted by despair. Because the emotional tone stays stable, momentum is preserved. Relaxation is often mistaken for passivity, yet it is the foundation of effective movement. A relaxed hand is more precise than a clenched one. In the same way, a relaxed mind is more effective than a strained one. It can respond quickly without panic and pause without fear. Wealth responds to this responsiveness. Expectation shapes perception. When one expects support, one notices evidence of it. When one expects difficulty, one notices obstacles. Ease shifts expectation toward support. This shift alone changes experience. Opportunities appear not because the world has changed, but because perception has widened. Faith also corrects self-concept. One who believes in constant struggle identifies as a struggler. One who believes in ease identifies as supported. This identity determines what feels permissible. Ease allows one to receive without guilt. It removes the unconscious belief that good must be paid for with suffering. When the mind rests in expectation, it stops sending mixed signals. It no longer affirms abundance while fearing loss. The signal becomes clear. The subconscious responds best to clarity. Clear expectation produces clear results. Ease invites cooperation. People respond differently to those who are relaxed and confident. Opportunities come through human channels as well as unseen ones. A calm presence attracts collaboration. Others sense the absence of desperation and feel safe engaging. This social harmony contributes to financial flow. Faith also sustains patience without stagnation. Waiting does not feel empty, it feels active internally. There is a sense that things are arranging themselves. This feeling prevents impulsive decisions made from fear. When action is taken, it is timely. Expectation without strain allows enjoyment before arrival. Gratitude arises naturally, not as a technique, but as a response to inner sufficiency. This gratitude reinforces the state of abundance. The subconscious registers fulfillment and seeks to maintain it. Ease removes the emotional noise that blocks intuition. In quiet confidence, subtle guidance is heard. This guidance often leads to simple adjustments that produce disproportionate results. Because these adjustments arise without effort, they are often underestimated. Yet they carry precision. Wealth moves toward those who are comfortable with it internally. Comfort is created through repeated states of ease and trust. Each time one relaxes into expectation, the nervous system learns that abundance is safe. This learning accumulates. Faith is cumulative. Each experience of ease that does not result in collapse strengthens trust. Over time, the mind releases old vigilance. It no longer braces for disappointment. This release frees energy that was previously spent on worry. Expectation becomes the dominant inner posture. From this posture, life responds smoothly. Money appears through ordinary channels, yet feels extraordinary only because strain has ended. The flow feels natural, almost quiet, unfolding through conversations, insights, timing, and subtle shifts that require no forcing, no struggle, no urgency, only continued alignment with the assumption that good moves easily toward those who allow it, remain receptive to it, and trust its intelligence enough to stay relaxed as it finds its way into form through calm awareness and steady confidence that does not need to announce itself or rush its own fulfillment. Struggle is not a requirement for progress. It is a habit of thought learned through repetition and reinforced by fear. Resistance forms when the mind believes that effort must be painful to be effective. This belief tightens the body, narrows perception, and interrupts natural flow. Intention, when combined with rest, gently dissolves this pattern. A nap, entered consciously, becomes more than physical recovery. It becomes a reset of mental posture. When the body lies down with purpose rather than exhaustion, It sends a different signal to the mind. The signal is safety. Safety allows release. In that release, the mind loosens its grip on problems it has been overworking. What was once held tightly begins to soften. Resistance thrives on tension, and tension cannot survive sustained relaxation paired with clear intent. Intention gives direction without pressure. It is a quiet decision rather than a demand. When one rests with intention, the mind is no longer battling circumstances, it is aligning with outcome. This alignment removes the inner argument that fuels struggle. The subconscious responds immediately to this change, because it prefers clarity over conflict. During intentional rest, the nervous system exits survival mode. Many forms of financial struggle are not logistical but neurological. The body remains braced as if danger were imminent. In this state, the mind cannot receive, it can only defend. A nap interrupts this loop. As the breath slows and muscles release, the subconscious receives confirmation that it is safe to let go. Resistance often masquerades as effort. The harder one tries, the more justified the resistance feels. Intention replaces this with allowance. Allowance does not mean inaction. It means removing obstruction. In a nap held with awareness, the mind stops pushing against what it wants, and instead permits it to approach. The subconscious is particularly responsive when the body is relaxed, but the intention is clear. This combination communicates trust. Trust dissolves the need to control. Control is a response to fear, and fear is the root of resistance. When control relaxes, pathways open that were previously blocked by overthinking. Struggle feeds on identity. Many people unconsciously identify with effort, believing that without struggle they will lose momentum or value. Intentional napping challenges this identity safely. It introduces a new experience, progress without strain. This experience begins to rewrite internal rules about how results are achieved. As resistance dissolves, mental energy returns. What was once spent on worry becomes available for perception. Solutions that were invisible under pressure become obvious in rest. These solutions do not arrive dramatically. They feel natural, almost ordinary. This ordinariness is a sign that resistance has lifted. Intention during rest also reframes desire. Instead of feeling distant or difficult, the desired outcome feels included in the present moment. This inclusion reduces emotional charge. When desire is no longer charged with urgency, the subconscious treats it as attainable, rather than threatening. Napping with intention interrupts the habit of mental rehearsal. Struggle repeats the same thoughts, hoping repetition will produce change. Rest breaks this loop. In the quiet that follows, new associations form. The mind begins to link ease with effectiveness, calm with results. Resistance is maintained by the belief that letting go will result in loss. Intentional rest disproves this belief experientially. Each time one rests and nothing collapses, trust grows. This trust weakens resistance at its root. The subconscious learns through experience rather than logic. A single intentional nap can teach it more about ease than hours of affirmations spoken under tension. The body remembers the feeling of release, and this memory becomes a reference point. Over time, the mind begins to choose ease automatically. Intention also prevents rest from becoming avoidance. Avoidance carries guilt, and guilt reintroduces resistance. Intention keeps rest aligned with purpose. It affirms that rest is part of movement, not its opposite. This affirmation eliminates inner conflict. As resistance dissolves, timing improves. Struggle rushes, ease synchronizes. Opportunities appear when the mind is no longer forcing outcomes prematurely. The subconscious coordinates action, and rest more intelligently when resistance is absent. Intentional napping also recalibrates expectation. Instead of expecting difficulty, the mind begins to expect support. Expectation influences perception. When support is expected, evidence of it becomes noticeable. This noticing reinforces the belief, further reducing resistance. The body plays a crucial role in this process. Physical relaxation sends biochemical signals that reduce stress hormones. These signals influence thought patterns. Calm thoughts replace defensive ones. The mind becomes cooperative rather than oppositional. Resistance often comes from unresolved fear of failure or success. In rest, these fears lose urgency. They are not confronted directly, they simply lose energy. Without energy, they cannot maintain resistance. Intention acts as a gentle guide rather than a command. It tells the subconscious what direction to move without insisting on how. This openness allows creative solutions. The subconscious excels at pattern recognition when not constrained by rigid control. Repeated intentional naps build a new relationship with effort. Effort becomes focused rather than frantic. Action arises from clarity instead of compulsion. This shift produces results that feel less costly emotionally. As struggle fades, self-trust increases. One begins to trust inner timing and guidance. This trust reduces second-guessing, which is a subtle form of resistance. Decisions become cleaner, with less internal debate. Resistance also dissolves in the emotional body. Feelings of frustration and impatience soften. Patience becomes natural rather than forced. This emotional shift stabilizes momentum. Intentional rest teaches the mind that stillness is not stagnation, it is integration. During a nap, experiences are processed, lessons absorbed, and adjustments made internally. This integration prevents repeated mistakes driven by unresolved tension. The practice of napping with intention gradually changes default response to challenge. Instead of tightening, the mind learns to pause. In that pause, resistance loses its foothold. The pause creates space, and space allows movement. As resistance diminishes, the flow of ideas increases. Creativity returns. Creativity is incompatible with struggle. It thrives in relaxed awareness. Financial solutions often require creativity more than effort. Intentional rest also reduces the fear of missing out. Struggle believes that stopping means falling behind. Ease understands that alignment keeps one on course. This understanding removes the pressure to constantly act. The subconscious, once freed from resistance, begins to coordinate behavior effortlessly. Actions feel timely rather than forced. Conversations unfold naturally. Decisions align with circumstance without excessive analysis. Over time, the cumulative effect of intentional naps reshapes internal environment. Calm becomes familiar. Struggle feels unnecessary rather than virtuous. Resistance, having lost reinforcement, dissolves quietly, replaced by a steady willingness to allow progress to occur through clarity, receptivity, and a relaxed confidence that no longer needs to push against life to move forward, remaining open to the intelligence that operates most effectively when the mind steps aside and the body rests without fear, guilt, or urgency. Acceptance is the quiet gateway through which change enters experience. Before anything can appear outwardly, it must be allowed inwardly. Inner acceptance is not approval of current conditions. It is recognition of possibility without resistance. When the mind accepts supply as real, available, and lawful, it removes the internal barriers that previously delayed its expression. This acceptance precedes all visible change, because the outer world responds only after the inner stance has shifted. Many people desire financial change while unconsciously rejecting it. This rejection may appear as doubt, guilt, unworthiness, or fear of responsibility. These attitudes operate silently, beneath conscious intention. Inner acceptance brings them to rest without confrontation. It does not argue with fear, it outgrows it. When supply is accepted as natural, the emotional charge around money dissolves. Acceptance alters self-concept. One cannot consistently receive what one does not believe belongs. When the mind accepts abundance as appropriate, it adjusts identity accordingly. This adjustment is subtle. It does not inflate ego, it stabilizes expectation. One begins to move, speak, and decide from a place that assumes support rather than lack. Outer circumstances mirror inner agreements. If the inner agreement is scarcity, the outer world complies faithfully. When the agreement changes, circumstances rearrange. This rearrangement may appear gradual or sudden, but it is always precise. Acceptance gives the subconscious permission to reorganize patterns that once upheld limitation. Inner acceptance also reduces emotional friction. Much energy is spent resisting what one wants because it feels unfamiliar or unsafe. Acceptance familiarizes abundance. It frames supply as an extension of order rather than an interruption. This familiarity allows the nervous system to relax. Around money-related thoughts. When acceptance is present, effort becomes cleaner. Actions are no longer driven by anxiety, they are guided by clarity. This clarity improves timing. One acts when action is appropriate, and waits when waiting serves alignment. This balance is impossible when the mind is internally divided. Acceptance does not require evidence. It precedes evidence. Waiting for proof before accepting supply keeps the inner door closed. Acceptance opens the door first. Evidence follows as a response. This sequence is often misunderstood, leading to frustration. Those who wait for certainty before acceptance remain suspended. Inner acceptance also affects perception of opportunity. Opportunities do not increase or decrease, awareness of them does. When supply is accepted internally, perception widens. One notices possibilities that were previously ignored or dismissed. These possibilities feel accessible rather than intimidating. Acceptance corrects the belief that receiving creates imbalance. Many fear that gain will be followed by loss. This fear blocks reception. Acceptance reframes gain as sustainable. It removes the expectation of penalty. This removal stabilizes flow. The subconscious responds to what is assumed, not what is wished. Acceptance communicates assumption. It tells the subconscious that supply is part of the existing order. The subconscious then acts to maintain this order, influencing habits, choices, and responses. Inner acceptance also dissolves comparison. Comparison reinforces lack by measuring against external standards. Acceptance turns attention inward. It affirms sufficiency without reference. This inward orientation stabilizes confidence. When supply is accepted, gratitude arises naturally. Gratitude is not forced appreciation, it is recognition of presence. This recognition reinforces acceptance. The cycle strengthens it. Self. Acceptance also changes how obstacles are interpreted. Instead of viewing them as denial, they are seen as redirection. This interpretation preserves emotional equilibrium. Equilibrium maintains momentum. Inner acceptance removes the need to justify desire. Wanting abundance no longer feels excessive or selfish, it feels appropriate. This emotional permission is essential. Without it, the mind sabotages progress unconsciously. Acceptance influences language, both internal and external. Words become less defensive. Statements become less conditional. This linguistic shift reflects and reinforces belief. The body responds to acceptance as safety. Muscles relax, breath deepens. This physical response feeds back into mental state, creating coherence. Coherence amplifies effectiveness. Acceptance does not eliminate action, it refines it. Actions taken from acceptance are fewer but more accurate. They require less recovery because they are not draining. When inner acceptance stabilizes, patience becomes effortless. Waiting does not feel empty, it feels aligned. This patience prevents premature action that disrupts flow. Acceptance also harmonizes giving and receiving. One no longer overgives to compensate for guilt or withholds from fear. Exchange becomes balanced. Balance sustains abundance. Inner acceptance teaches the mind to remain open during uncertainty. Uncertainty no longer signals danger, it signals movement. This reinterpretation prevents contraction. Acceptance reduces the tendency to rehearse worst-case scenarios. The mind stops preparing for loss and begins preparing for continuity. Preparation shapes outcome. As acceptance deepens, intuition sharpens. The mind becomes quieter, more receptive. Guidance is recognized more easily. This guidance often appears ordinary, yet it carries accuracy. Acceptance also influences how success is handled. Wit. Without acceptance, success creates pressure to maintain or expand. With acceptance, success integrates smoothly. There is no emotional spike. Inner acceptance establishes a baseline of sufficiency. From this baseline, growth occurs without instability. The nervous system does not oscillate between hope and fear. Acceptance removes the sense of distance between desire and reality. Desire feels included rather than postponed. This inclusion reduces urgency. The subconscious organizes experience to match accepted reality. It does so gradually and persistently. Small adjustments accumulate. Acceptance also dissolves resentment toward those who have what one desires. Resentment reinforces separation. Acceptance restores unity. When acceptance becomes habitual, it replaces vigilance. One no longer scans for threat around money. This absence of vigilance frees attention. Acceptance does not deny challenges, it denies their authority. Challenges become variables rather than verdicts. Inner acceptance also stabilizes focus. Attention is no longer scattered by worry. It remains present. As acceptance strengthens, the sense of effort decreases. What once felt heavy feels neutral. Neutrality allows flow. Acceptance teaches the mind to receive without bracing. Bracing anticipates loss. Receiving without bracing sustains gain. The outer world responds to inner acceptance through timing, encounters, information, and opportunity. These responses feel coincidental but are patterned. Acceptance also influences how one ends cycles. One releases what no longer fits without fear. This release creates space. The acceptance of supply precedes visible change because it alters the conditions under which change can occur. Without acceptance, new conditions cannot stabilize. Inner acceptance becomes a silent instruction continually issued to the subconscious. This instruction governs expectation. Expectation governs interpretation. Interpretation governs reaction. Reaction governs outcome. As acceptance deepens, reaction slows. Slowness allows choice. Choice restores agency. Agency stabilizes confidence. Confidence reinforces acceptance. This cycle operates quietly, beneath awareness, shaping daily experience without announcement, continuing to adjust perception, behavior, and response in alignment with the accepted premise that supply is lawful, accessible, and ongoing, expressing itself through natural channels, ordinary moments, and subtle shifts that accumulate without drama, without strain, without the need for proof in advance, sustained by the inner permission that allows reality to reorganize itself around what has already been accepted as true within consciousness.